to the Woman Witness podcast on the Woman Witness TV network. I'm your host, Leah Fortier. I want to thank you so much for tuning in to our 12 episodes of December with 12 inspiring women with 12 inspiring stories. We cannot wait to gift you a gift that continues to keep giving throughout the month of December. Welcome to another episode of Woman Witness Podcast, The Stories at the Well. I'm your host, Leah Fortier. Here on this platform, we bring to you voices of women that are out there making a positive impact in their lives, in their families, and in the community as a whole. Today, I have a very special topic and a very special guest for you, Ms. Blessings Adogome. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to read to you a little bit about her before I introduce her. Blessings is a global citizen who grew up in Nigeria, Germany, and Scotland, and the United States, utilizing her diverse background to inspire individuals worldwide. Her upbringing as a nomad nurtured her deep love for learning and adaptability. Each move between countries became a chance for self-exploration, nourishing resilience in challenging times. Her dedication to student growth and education access became apparent during her years in the university. Blessings launched a global campaign that engaged over 20,000 students on LinkedIn. Whoa. Stressing the importance of realizing one's full potential. Apart from her online presence, Blessing shares her knowledge at the United Nations, schools worldwide, and STEM workshops that support young Black girls in the tech field. Through her varied experiences, she actively opens doors for others to promote their transformative influence of education locally and globally. Wow, I am so excited to introduce you my guest today, Miss Blessings Adogome. Blessings, welcome to the well.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. And I know that you are in the United Kingdom, so it is late over there. So I'm
Yeah,
so excited that you jumped on with me this morning.
of course, of course.
So the sun is nicely shining over here. It's about 11 o'clock a.m. in California. So
And the sun is going down here. So
it is. Well, I'm excited to have you on, and I'm so excited about what you are doing. And I want you to share with us a little bit about it and how you got started and the power behind it. So, could you just tell us a little bit of, tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
no, I appreciate that. And I think you kind of already started to touch on it in my bio where, I've grown up in all these different countries that are honestly pretty diverse in their own respect. And it also led me to experience the education system in different aspects. So, for example, I did my kindergarten years in Germany, I did primary school in the UK, and then high school and undergrad in the United States. And so throughout that like academic journey, I was able to learn a lot about myself, but then also the systems that I was in, especially as a young Nigerian slash British girl. And so that kind of inspired me to tap into the world of education, because something that I found as well as an international student was that the systems I would enter into, a lot of the students would be quite complacent, and me coming from a different background, I was able to come in and kind of move the needle, as they would say. But as much as you'd think that that would be a good thing, a lot of people actually didn't like it because it
Mm,
was different. And so I had to kind of like fight between, do I just succumb to the way that everyone else is, or do I make myself known? Because as an international student, there were also scholarships and different things that I just wasn't allowed to um,
even apply for.
applied to exactly. And so I needed to put myself out there and put my face out there, my name out there to get these different opportunities. And so I kind of
Mm,
had to, push it
Yeah,
to
going
get to
straight.
where I wanted to be. Yeah.
Wow, okay, I wanna hear more about that, right? Because you're in a new place, you're in a new country, you don't know to, create a ruckus or, just to blend in and be quiet, right? So, I want you to talk to us about that. Like, what was that defining moment that you said, "You know what? I'm gonna speak up. I am different, and I'm gonna go after these things." What did you do? What happened? What was that defining moment?
Good question. So I remember moving from Scotland in the United Kingdom to the United States in my last year of high school.
Mm,
And if you know anything about high school, you have no business moving, relocating
yeah,
house, relocating city, continent, and school in
right,
your last year. And I had to do all of the above. And
right.
so
Oh my
that
god.
was a lot for me. It was a lot. Um,
Oh my goodness.
and it made me very quiet and timid because
You're in a new place.
yeah, and it wasn't my choice to move. And so for my final year and my first year in the United States as a senior, I kind of just went to school, did my classes, and then I went back home. No one knew me. I knew no one. And then that's just how it was for the year. And at that point, when it came to, as a senior, you're already thinking about universities.
Yeah.
And I personally wanted to go back to the UK for university, but at that point, my whole family had moved to the United States. And so it was like, okay, well,
Here we are.
now, yeah, I'm staying in the United States. So what next?
Yeah.
And I would say that the defining moment for me was when it dawned on me that compared to university in Scotland, which is almost free if you want to compare it to how much it costs in the United States.
Uh-huh.
I knew that if I continued the way I was continuing, like how I started in high school in the United States, I wouldn't get very far. And especially moving so abruptly, my family didn't have savings for university.
Yeah.
It wasn't in the plan. And again, on top of that, we were international. And so there was just
Right.
this huge amount of money that I was like, how are we going to pay this? So I knew that if I wanted to get scholarships, people needed to know me, organizations needed to know me. And so at that point, I said, well, I'm going to be in the United States for 4 years for university. I'm going to try and make the most of it. So that's when I started to like utilize social media, LinkedIn to just put myself out there more so that I would have credibility almost when I'm applying to scholarships and different programs and internships that could ultimately help me pay for school.
I like that. So you looked at your situation and you were like, "Hold on, right? And you know what? Let's just talk about it." And I think this is something that is daunting for a lot of people, a lot of high school kids, a lot of who parents don't have the money saved up for their education after high school, right? Because that's where the dollar starts sacking, and then they start thinking, "What now?" And maybe it's not going to be able to happen for me. So I can definitely see you in that position, but I love the fact that you took it into your own hands and made a way. And I want you to you're going to talk to us about that. Tell us what you organized on LinkedIn, that you rallied over 20,000 students, because I know there are a lot of students out there who are in your same boat, in your same situation, and they're trying to figure out what's next.
Yeah. So when I was in, I think just entering my second year of uni,
Mhm.
I did, I guess, kind of like an internship, and I was a social business strategist for a startup company, and it was basically teaching or building software to teach the employees of that company to basically sell specifically using Twitter and LinkedIn. And so at that point, I was pretty well versed with Twitter and LinkedIn, even though I wasn't on the platforms myself. I realized at that point, I was like, well, you know, I'm teaching professionals or, employees at these companies to use LinkedIn. So, I mean, I'm not a professional, but eventually I'll get there. So maybe let me use the tips that I'm giving out, let me bring it back to my own life. And so I started to create content as a student in my second year. At
And you
that
did
point, I
pretty
was
good.
talking, yeah, it didn't make sense at that point. This was like 2017, 2018. LinkedIn is a professional platform. And so,
Mhm.
again, I had this opportunity to kind of step into a new environment and see what I can do. And so, as a student, I would post about my classes, I would post about extracurricular activities that I was doing, and just kind of like build that portfolio,
Yeah.
especially knowing that, well, eventually, once I graduate, I will be a full fledged professional. But
Yes.
even when I'm interning, I'm technically a professional. And so as I started on the platform, I saw that not many students were on it. And rightly so, it's a professional platform. They
Yeah.
feel like they have to be a professional or they have to be some type of way to be on it, which was definitely fair enough. But I tried to bridge the gap between campus and career. And so that's when I started the Students of LinkedIn campaign, which basically helped to expose and educate and empower students to not just use LinkedIn only, but just to build their personal brand in general. And knowing that, yes, you're putting in these steps in your 4 or 5 years that you're in college, but then it will actually help you a lot once you've graduated, because I didn't like the idea that students only started doing all of this stuff once they've graduated. I think at that point it's way too late.
Absolutely.
Yeah, especially in the economy that we're in now, it's very difficult. So I basically started this campaign to just get the ball rolling, that
Yeah.
people, that students specifically, will feel more comfortable on creating content. And so what did that look like? It looked like me continuing to create that content for others, but then
Yeah.
also I would go to like different conferences and different schools and I would take videos of other students just sharing their story, and I would use the hashtag to post that online. It turned from something that I would just do on my college campus in Philadelphia to a global campaign, which, yeah, I was very proud of. And now, I mean, how many years later, there is a huge student community on LinkedIn. So
Blessing does is amazing. And she tells the story so humbly. I love that so much, and you're absolutely right. You were absolutely right. I have a older son who recently graduated, and he dusted off his LinkedIn from high school, and he's, trying to build it up now, and, and put it into, perspective where it kind of needs to be, right? After graduating from college, and, to get into some of those doors, right? And he's like, "Man, I wish I would have started it sooner." But you don't know what you don't know, right? But look, I love what you're doing. That is so amazing. Okay, so I want to talk about the power of education. So, can you talk to us about the transformative power of education? And can you elaborate a little bit about what that means to you and provide some examples of how you've seen education change the lives of, some young adults?
I love this topic. And I think more recently have I become interested in education, I guess kind of stemming from what I've just mentioned. So my dad is actually a professor. And so a lot of the reason, or the only reason why my family has moved a lot, is because of his profession. So he would teach at different universities, and us as a family would follow him. And so he teaches Christianity and society. It's a topic that I've started to appreciate more recently. But of course, when I was young, even when people would ask me, I'd be like, I don't know. I just know that he's a professor and students always come to the house. That's all I know. But I guess without me knowing, it started from then, where I've just grown up seeing my dad in this role as a professor. I think I learned about education in a more broad sense, that it's not just
Yeah.
sitting in a classroom, writing in your writing in your notebook, reading a textbook. It's been so much more than that. And I think from my dad, I've seen that it's okay, the personal aspects of it as well, because if we're looking at education as a whole,
Yeah.
there's so much that goes into learning. If you don't eat the right food, you don't have the mental capacity or the energy to actually read and retain the information.
Mm.
If you don't have the right resources, a laptop or technology, notebooks, that kind of stuff, then it's very difficult to just learn in general. And so I saw him come in as a professor that, I think in movies and TV shows, you see professors portrayed in a certain way.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
it's like,
You're
but I've
like
never seen my
that
dad in that way. I've never seen my dad in that way. And I think that opened up, okay, education is more dynamic than just this rigid, everything is so historic, and it's not dynamic at
guy.
all. And for him, I saw it more as people first kind of education. And
Mhm.
so I remember I would joke with my siblings that every single Christmas, apart from COVID, we always had like international students come to our house, because Of
I
course,
love
they're international, they can't go back home during the
Yeah,
holidays. So our house was always a revolving door of students coming in, whether just to eat foods that reminds them of home or just to talk to my dad or to get advice, things like that. And so that
oh,
really helped me to appreciate education because yeah, it can be a lonely journey, especially
yeah,
if you're moving from one place to another just to pursue education, but it
yeah,
can be so much more when you have a community. And so I think that's what my dad helped to instill in me when it comes to education outside of the context or the content of what he teaches because it took me a while to really understand.
yes,
um, but I personally love education specifically for, I guess, what I call informal education. So not just being in a classroom and learning, but okay, how do we learn even through TV shows? I remember I used to make an excuse that I'm watching this TV show or I'm watching this movie to learn.
the,
And I would joke about it, but honestly, like even, I watch things like Grey's Anatomy and I genuinely
yes,
learn things even without actively learning.
yes,
I think it's just that like redefining the term learning because again, a lot of people hear learning, you think it's very
Mhm.
traditional textbook, course, tutorial, that kind of thing.
Yes,
But there are so many ways that we learn. And so that's the part that I like to tap into because I think that I have a quite creative mind. And
yeah,
so I try to push the boundaries and kind of test the waters and okay, how are different ways that people can learn, not just through technology, but
yeah,
through other modes as well. And I think, especially with technology,
yeah.
there's so many opportunities. But again, it goes back to access. So there's a lot to talk about when it comes to technology, but I'll just stop there for now.
Oh, I don't want you to. Actually, I hold on, I will say I do love your mind, and I love where you're going, and I do believe even, I feel like at a certain age, right, we get to a point where like, we've learned everything that we need to learn. We got to go out into the world, but I feel like you never stop learning, and I love the fact that you are even talking about different ways that people are able to learn and retain information, and that is an ongoing thing. I think the day that we decide that we're done learning is a day that we kind of die slowly. Okay, sorry. Okay, so and I want to just also point this out. I love the fact that you said you grew up where your doors were always open to students who were traveling or foreign students who were coming in and they didn't have that family, and you even had an opportunity, right, to be in different places and different settings, so you are able to give that back. So I love that. Okay, can you tell us a little bit about your projects and collaborations that you have been a part of? I know you've been a part of a STEM. I looked online, you were a part of a STEM. Tell us about that.
Again, I guess going back to the point of pushing boundaries and everything like that. So when I was in university again, second year, I feel like a lot happened in that second year that I was like, let me just push myself
Go in there,
forward. I had actually switched my major a couple of times. So
Okay.
I did computer science, I did software
Mhm.
engineering, and then I eventually did information systems. Even though I switched multiple times, I was still in tech. And so, being a minority, I knew that I needed a community to just make me feel like I can do it, basically.
Yes.
So I joined a fellowship program that was part of a organization called Rewriting the Code. It's basically a nonprofit that supports women in tech, both students and early career professionals. And so I joined them as a fellow throughout my years in college or my remainder in college. And then I graduated, started working at Microsoft, and was still part of the community because yeah, they support early career women as well. And
Uh,
when I moved from it's a whole thing. I got laid off from Microsoft, unfortunately, at the beginning of last year.
okay.
And I now had the opportunity to figure out, well,
Now,
what do I do? Because
yeah.
I got into Microsoft straight out of university. So
Okay.
it went straight from, college to corporate world. And
Yeah.
so now I had an opportunity to really kind of like sit down and be like, okay, what do I actually want to do?
Want to do.
And
Mhm.
because of the industry as well right now, I thought, well, instead of spending a lot of months looking for jobs, maybe in the meantime, let me upskill myself even more and go for a master's. And
Mhm.
so that's when I decided to return back to the UK. and
Mhm.
pursue my master's in education and technology.
Okay.
And when I was moving back, I was looking for part-time jobs, and I saw that the organization that I was part of as a member was also moving to the UK, or they're starting a branch in the UK. So here was me sending an email to the CEO. Hey, I've been part of the community for this amount of time. I absolutely love it. I'm in the UK right now looking for part-time opportunities, but I would just love to help out, as we build the community from the ground up. And just like that, we were able to create my role. Very grateful to them, created my role from scratch. And yeah, now I'm working with them to basically pay it forward and support students and early career professionals who are women in tech.
Blessings. Oh my gosh. Girl, let me tell you something. You redefine opportunity. You gotta ask for it and you gotta put yourself out there and create paths that no one else is doing. And that is what you are doing. I love that so much. I mean, oh my gosh. Okay, I'm blown away. I need everybody to listen, okay, right? Anything that you want, you need to ask for it and make yourself available to it. And especially things that are new, right? Things that are different, things that defy the odds, things that, people think that it can't be done. Blessings when I hear you have presented opportunities to people and started movements that people maybe have felt that can't be done. And look at what you're doing. Okay. What are some of your biggest challenges you encountered in your advocacy work, and how have you addressed them?
I think very early on, especially when it came to LinkedIn, because I was, of course, very focused on students, and I would speak at student organizations and different organizations to basically try and get more students on LinkedIn. And I wouldn't say there was backlash, but it took some time for students to really like hear me, because it's like, so you're telling me that as a student, I should go on this professional platform when I'm not a professional. And it came to a point where there was so much, like, I guess, tension, or I could feel that there was tension because they just, like, they would hear but they wouldn't necessarily listen, or they would listen but they wouldn't necessarily hear. And so there was a point that I had to realize that, okay, well, I need to do more walking than talking. And
Mm,
so the more that I posted and did all of these things and showed how me creating content on LinkedIn led to an internship, led to a scholarship, led to a speaking engagement, then they're like, oh, I want to get on that too. And so that was a challenge that, for honestly, for quite a while, for the majority of the time, it was really just
kind of
like
fighting, pushing in
push and
something new.
pull, yeah. And it's like now that I see the rewards, okay, people are finally, or students are finally understanding.
Right.
Um, but I think it's just something as well that I learned early on in leadership, and also from my dad, that yeah, it's one thing to talk and people can hear from they can hear from your words, but let them see from your experience as well. And
Mm,
so yeah, through the things that I was able to do, people were like, and then it was funny because there was a point where, because I was one of the few people in my, I guess, like, university ecosystem that was posting on LinkedIn so much, it
yeah.
meant that most of my peers only saw my content on LinkedIn. And so they
Mm,
would ask me, like, almost in a condescending way, like, why are you always on my feed? Like, why are you always posting? And I
yeah.
mean, I just what can I say? I didn't really have a goal at that point as well, which is funny. I
Right.
was just like, well, I'm just trying it out.
Right.
And it was ironic because then months down the line, it was those same people that were asking me for help, like, oh, listen, can I get help on my LinkedIn? And
Yeah.
um I think it's just one of those things about trying something new. A lot of people, they're scared
Right.
to do it, and so they will be, I guess, a bit apprehensive at first until
Yeah.
they see that it works, and then they'll come back to you. And so I try to not let that deter me too much. Some people latched onto it pretty quickly, some people didn't. But eventually, I think it's an invaluable platform that I think many people are realizing now. It's almost like an industry standard
It is.
that
Yeah. Have a
you finish
LinkedIn?
school, or yeah, exactly, literally. So, but of course, back then I didn't know that. I didn't know if it was going to fail. I didn't know if it would, I didn't know what was going to happen. I was just willing to try and see where it would take me.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Hold on. Let me just dip into this real quick. You know, I feel that some people, right? And it's a very select few people, right, who are called and very few people are even chosen. So sometimes I believe that some people get insight. God will give you a plan, give you a vision, give Noah the vision to build an ark, right? They never seen rain, right? You know, and you have that, and sometimes you gotta move by yourself in order for other people to jump on board, and then they're gonna be like, "Dang, she wasn't crazy. She didn't make this up," right? But you're right, Blessing, so many of us are afraid to move on a hunch or move on our own vision because we don't even trust ourselves, right? Let's be real. I mean, right? You're like, "I can't do that." That imposter syndrome is real. But I love it that you are so young and you are so confident in what you believe in that you just do it afraid. Do it anyways. Okay, Blessing, you got me all worked up. I am so like, okay. For our listeners who are listening, they're inspired by your work and they want to get involved in the education advocacy, and they want to make a difference and start walking in some of their ideas and some of those gut feelings that they're experiencing. What advice would you give them to get started?
I would give a few pieces of advice that helped me and still helps me now because, of course, I'm always doing something new. And so I recycle and those things that have worked.
Yeah.
One of those things would be starting small. I know sometimes people have anxiety and they have fear about something because it just looks too big and it looks unattainable. But something that I learned is just to start small and
Mm.
use that as an opportunity to humble yourself, one, but
Yes.
then also just to practice and fail and get what you need so that when the big spotlight is on you, you know what you're doing. And that's
Mm,
something that it's kind of like a personal thing with me and God where when I
mm,
do have a big idea, he
mm.
helps me to kind of scale back because yeah, you have a big idea, you can get so ambitious, but then it just falls short.
Yeah.
And if that's a dream that God has given you, then you best know that he wants you to be the best at it.
Right.
And the example I'll give about that was
Yeah.
scholarships. So I know of
Mhm.
course many people and you see it like a lot of celebrities that have
Yeah.
millions and thousands, they do scholarships or a lot of philanthropic work, right? Again, as a student, I was like, well, why can't I do a scholarship? I mean, I'm a student too. I'm not a
Yes.
broke student. I didn't use that. I didn't have that mentality. Actually, a
Yes.
lot of people joke about it, but I'm like, nah, I'm not speaking that way in my life. I'm a
Exactly.
student, but I'm not broke.
Uh-huh.
So again, I'm like, well, yeah, I would love to support again students with education because tuition fees and rooming fees is also a big thing. And so I said, well, I may not have thousands. I don't even have a full time job, but what I do have is this community that I've built on LinkedIn. And so I asked them to support me on this journey. And I was able to raise thousands of dollars for international students and give that away as a student myself, which is kind of ironic because I also need the money. But again, this was me just showing people that you don't have to be X, Y, and Z to do ABC. I was a student in, I think it was my junior year, and I was able to raise thousands for other students like myself, not because I had a job, not because I have parents that are wealthy, but
Right.
because I had something, and a lot of people don't know what they have. I literally just had my community, a lot of people that don't even know me, but they wanted to support. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, I started small, and after that, I started doing more scholarships and more scholarships. And yeah, God willing, once I have enough to give more, I will
Yeah.
give more, but I don't limit myself based on what I have in the current moment.
I'm blown away. I'm so sorry. Blessings. Okay, listen. I believe that we are our own sometimes we are our own worst enemy, right? And we stop ourselves because we say, I don't have this. I cannot do that. But I love your outlook. I love your view on life. Um, and yeah, you're giving scholarships. That is amazing. I'm trying to tell you right now. You know what? I remember the first time I tell my little story. I remember the first time I wanted to start this podcast, and I didn't know how I was gonna do it. And I remember saying, "Well, maybe I'm gonna, someone's gonna sponsor, someone's gonna do this." And I spoke with a friend of mine, and she was like, "Leah, what do you need?" And I was like, "Oh, well." She's like, "What do you need?" And I was like, "Well, I don't know, maybe a microphone. I don't know." Like, she's like, "Whatever you need, go do it. Get it. And just do it." And literally, it's one of those things that we stop ourselves because we're trying to wait for this big moment, this big, sponsorship, this big money to fall from the sky and we have it right in our own back pockets, in our hearts, in our mind, in that gift that God gave us. And okay, I gotta calm down. I am blown away. Okay, blessings. Thank you so much. I have kept you. Before I let you go, I want you to leave some of our listeners with something that they can take with them throughout the week, take with them throughout. I want them to leave listening to this and hit the ground running. What would you tell them?
Something that I carry with me is the initial idea that I had about my life that my story wasn't interesting. Especially, people here that I've lived in all these places and they're like, oh, wow, that's so cool. But me, I was like, no, it wasn't a great experience. Um, but I say that to use as an encouragement that even the things that we think are insignificant in our life can be significant if we let it. I could have lived my life being very woeful and thinking that I had no story and I had nothing to give, but it was from me tapping into what I may think is just something very mundane, very insignificant that helped me get to where I am now. So whatever you might think is just it's just blessing. It's just Leah. It's just me. It's the very thing that can take you from point A to point B. So don't think that any part of your story is insignificant because if God created us in his image, and there's so many things that he wants us to bring out of us. And so, yeah, I'd say if you're ever feeling down or disappointed or discouraged, maybe it's time for you to take a look back about who you are, your circumstances, your upbringing. Yes, it may not have been the greatest, but I believe personally that God can turn everything for my good and for his glory, or for our good and for his glory. So even the things that we might not think are great, write them down and see how you can turn that story around.
Oh, I like that. Oh, I like that. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna quote that. Write that down and see how you can turn it around. Mm. Okay, blessings. You are such a delight. You are brilliant. You're smart. I love your vision. I love what you brought here to this well. You have gotten me so excited, so pumped up. And I pray that every listener that is listening is inspired and knows deep down inside that you can go and get it. Whatever it is that you want, you could go and get it. And do not be afraid to be different and stand out. That is, as you said, blessings. That is what makes you you. Mm, love it so much. Okay, so thank you so much for being my guest today. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening to another episode of Woman Witness Podcast, The Stories by the Well. If you were blessed by this conversation today, or even if you want to get in touch with Blessings to get you going or find out ways that you can join and partner with her or support her in her journey, we ask that you do so. And I will leave the information in the description below. Joining us on another episode of the Woman Witness Podcast on Woman Witness TV Network. Perhaps you were chosen for such a time as this to write, to tell your story, your truth. Until next time.